let's talk a little bit about this this model. So this is the scan that I got. It's a very nice scan. But you can see, if I will put it next to the costan that I got, so we have the scan of the costan and this scan. You can see that the costan have way more detail to bake from, although realistically I guess it's should be a bit smaller. And here we kind of have opportunity to see a model that I would not even do lower mesh. I would just stay with this mesh the way it is. It's as I remember, it's 130,000. It's not so much, I would say. But you can see here in this model we will actually need to add details of height, because you can see it's a bit blurry. Compare, of course, to the costan. So that's why in this case, model like this, I would skip the smoothing like we did last time. I would skip the smoothing in this and maybe just use only the model as it is now. Of course, if we have demand to have lower, we can even go a third of it, and then we can bake the details from this one, which is the height. Now, the other good things that have been done on this model, and it's worth paying attention, if I will take the original, I think it's this one here. You can see, I guess this is how it came from the scan. Now it's good to rotate the model to the center of the scene and to make it the way it came to me, because it will be very hard to navigate in substance scene if your model is not at least standing upright on the z-axis. Because substance always want to rotate around the center. Of course, there is like other option, but it's not so comfortable. So yeah, so this is another thing that we need to do. Now I will just hide the costan. Okay, so now the other thing I did on this model is that, as you can see now, it's on hard edges, and it will actually it's more demanding when it comes to app like Unity later on. It's always better to have a softened edge. And since we are already going to bake it, what I always do with models, and except rare cases and very specific, is that I try to make it smooth. So I do the edge smooth. Okay. And now when we do the edge smooth, we can see that we have in some places, this is quite good, but in the cigar model, I saw it more. But you can see we have this kind of black things. And this is something going wrong with the normals. And if I will go to edit mode, you can see that we have here some vertex that sit not so very nice. We can adjust it. Now again, this is not a horrible example because you don't see much of those here. But it is worth to, after smoothing, to look around and to see if there are any problems. Now, easy way to fix those problems would be just to go with a very, very soft, smooth brush, and you can go quickly and make them better. But other than this, by smoothing, we are kind of ready. Now, I did create high poly, and what I just did, I tried to make it a bit more sharp, so I put bevel modifier, and also I put subdivision modifier, and then export as high. But other than this, we don't, it was not necessarily really to do it. I just liked, because it felt to me that the edges are very sharp, so you can see that it's a little bit softer when it comes to the high. We kind of, let me try to do it again. You see here we get those kind of hard edges, which are going to be translated in the baking. So I just subdivide it, and you can even skip the bevel, just subdivision, and I export it as high. So this is about this model. So like I said, we are joined by Jure, our in-house artist when it comes to sculpting and texturing. And this will be a nice little treat to see how he works and how he will convert this scan to something very, very interesting. Of course, this is one way to take it. So without further ado, Jure, take control.
Okay, so this is a test I made of the model, but I'll go from the start, I guess. Okay, so this is what we got. I already baked it and everything. I think you already went through it. What was a bit of a hassle here was the UVs, which are not optimal. But I made everyone a ID map, which is basically just coloring in what you wish to be colored. I will export it now. It's just drag it into this, click it as a texture, and then current session or project. Seeing as we're doing everything now on this one, project is probably the safest way to do it, because then it's constantly saved. You just drag and click it into the ID map, and that's it. You can click this off. I also gave everyone the smart materials I used. So for this one, I used, I think it was this one, which is just a basic wood that I usually start with. But because of the 3D scanned UVs, everything should be set on triplanar projection so that it's in uniform. You have to do basically everything hand by hand, like one by one. So this one should be, this one you have to do it in the mask, because the mask gives you the pattern of the wood. Like if I turn it here, this all switches. So you set this to triplanar, and this one also. Once you have this, usually you just move it however you want, so you can have a better look. And usually I just, for me, you try to do like, how should it look like if it was like a real statue you're looking at. So the grains on, let's say, the base should go up, and on these ones, like in the middle, is going like horizontal. So you set the rotation here under this. If you want. And when everything is done, you make a black mask, or from the beginning, add mask with color selection. Then on the bottom, you'll have like a pick color option. So you do this and you click the color you have from the ID map, which is made. So it makes everything simpler and you don't have to color the mask in manually. You can also make the ID masks in Maya, ZBrush, or Blender, so should not be a problem. What I usually do then, if everything is made out of wood, or the pieces that are wood, I duplicate, and delete this color selection that you don't need, add another one, then you have this one. But then you'll have to also switch these ones with what we did before, so back to the original with all of them. The ones in the back, I also made it for, like they're both separate, so you can rotate it however you want. I gave you the option, like whatever you need. So again, I duplicate it and then just color select from the ID map. And then you also have like these. There are some spots, but those you can also color it out normally with just a paintbrush, and everything should be fine, like minimal corrections. For the main texture, what I usually do, I also include it in the file, is either you buy or you find something on the internet of a texture of like wood or whatever you want. Depends what you're doing, I guess. I use this one, and then I included it with the copy stamp tool, but this takes a lot of time. I will show it on the rock where to save some time how to do it like well. When I finished with this, I exported the color map, and it's also included in the file, which I will import now to save you time. It's a texture. And what you do is just do a fill layer, drag it into the base color, and you have your wood. This one also included the stones, but I will get them out. Just a sec. Now, what I did now is select only the stones and the ground, which we don't need. Then you add in a levels layer and click invert, and it inverts the whole thing, so you have the thing you want. Now what I did this before is, because now that you have the main one, you can like put it on overlay, change the color, and the one in the back still shows a bit. So you still have a little bit of texture going from the bottom one if you want to. So usually I just do it like this. What you can also do now is, because you have everything in the, wait just a sec, okay, is make another layer, take everything off, so you have just the height, and you can set the height to however you wish. Then make a black mask, put in a fill layer, and drag it into the grayscale, so it will give you every bump from this map will be a height map. And you can now, however much you want or need, you can now manipulate it. Now we have both the one from the bottom and on this one. They both show through to give extra detail. Then after you're happy with this, you click everything and then just group layers. Hopefully it doesn't crash. And then just name it wood. Oh yeah, I forgot. Also the color selection from this and this. Then you add the fill and then you put it in. So now you have it like this, as it should be. And you still have the height. Yeah, after this, it's going on to the clone stamp tool, like he mentioned earlier. I also included the materials I used for the stones and the pictures, so you can either follow me or do it when you want to. Drag it in, make the group, color selection, and you pick the color. So now this will only affect this. Put it on triplanar and scale it to however you feel like it looks the most natural, like a rock should, or a stone. So me, I would probably leave it like this, I guess. Yeah. This one we will basically only use for the bump or the height map and the roughness. So what we do now is create a fill layer with only color. And we select the stones. We drag them in, set this to texture, and current session or project. If you do shelf, everything will be saved in your current substance. So it will fill up really fast if you do that. I usually do current session. So now what we do is put it into the base color, do triplanar, and scale it to however you want it to be scaled. Now what you can also do is play with the height on the basic rock, so you can have more height from the picture we made now, which is, I think, best about here. But you can do whatever you want. Yeah, then if you do import a picture, usually it gets like this because of the UVs and everything. So either you try to find a nice balance, but you never can, so then you use a clone tool, which is go with the paint layer, you put it on color and pass through, click the clone, and V for when you want to sample it. Usually I just go like this, to make it as believable as you can. sometimes it's not perfect, so you have to sample it many times over, just like in Photoshop. Try switching the light as much as you can, because sometimes you just don't see well with some shades. You can also try with opacity. Sometimes it helps, because then you get a nice gradient, like a good pass between them to blend them in together, and that's usually what you're trying to achieve, so that it looks uniform. But then again, yeah, depends on what quality picture you find. Usually the good ones are not free, but you can still find a lot of free textures online. Substance, I think, has them a lot. If not, Pinterest, that's the best thing. Once you're happy with it, then you can try to, what I did is find some reference photos of usually in Nero, or what the client wants for this, because it's Japanese and I had a bit of free range. I used a picture of just a Japanese gate that's made out of wood, so you can have all the details like the moss, the texture, the weathering, everything. So from this point, this is more or less done, and I go on to the paint. I think everyone has this. It comes standard with I guess a crash. No, okay, good. Save also. Usually the smart materials for like steel and worn steel here are pretty good. You just need like minor modifications to it, so this is made for metal, so what you have to do here is take out the metal map, or if you don't use it on your model, take it out completely on metallic. But for now, I'm gonna leave it just to show you. So you take the metal out of everything that needs to be non-metal. So yeah, then you get this, which is a bit odd, because you still have the base metal underneath. That we don't need, so we just delete it out. What I usually do then is, in the rust, I change the color to a red. You can, this color picker, if you hold it and have a picture on the other screen, you can just drag it on and it samples the picture from wherever you want. So usually I take like this hue, turn it down a bit, so it looks like this. Then under technical parameters you have the height, which you need to play around with to make it look believable, so that it looks like paint. so it sticks out a bit, that it's not caved in, because then it just looks like rust or rotting. So you set it to however you want, usually this. Now what I do for this is the same. I leave the height, because it's fine as it is. You go under height and you put both of these onto normal, because then the wood underneath won't affect this one. So both on normal, back to base color. Now it looks like just it's coated, so you don't want that. I took a sample of red you want, or any color you want. Add black mask, and then under smart masks, usually either you make it yourself, the generator, which is a bit complex at the moment, I think. I don't know. I think he'll go over it with you if he did not already. So what I usually do is probably surface rust. No. Find one that works, which you think should be the best. I think usually this one is the best one for it. So it gives you a bit of a damaged look. With the height, you also bump up the height a little bit, so you have more control. So it's starting to look like worn paint. And what I then usually do is manually go in and paint using one of the brushes, or you can make a brush, or I think also now you can import it from Photoshop or anything else. So now maybe this one. Hold on Control and scroll button, or usually scroll buttons. Then you can manually paint it in wherever you want to have more or less paint. X is to switch from white to black, so that's also good to know. Then yeah, just paint it in how I usually do it. And again, once the main thing is you try to tell a story with whatever you're doing. So if you want it to be damaged, try to think where it would be the most damaged, where like the most amount of water would drip on it and destroy the paint. So usually the edges, the bottom a little bit, but most would be damaged on top from the sun and the rain. So the wood would be see-through. Also play with the opacity a bit, so you get a good... What I forgot was the rocks should not be painted, so should be on top of this folder, so to not affect this one. Yeah. This takes a bit of trial and error, just practice, and then usually you know how things should look like the more you work on it. The easier it gets. Then after this, let's make this a bit more red. What I usually do is duplicate the layer, keep it as is, delete this one out, switch it to a bit of a lighter tone, just like a few degrees off. And then I usually like rust spreading or whatever you do, like you play around with the slides so you can see like what's the intensity, what's the spreading. Like usually I tone it down a bit, put on a filter, and then put a blur in. Drop down the intensity a little bit so that you have like a little bit of color going on. So after that usually comes, well, either you do the ground or some wearing inside the cracks where it's like connecting a bit of dirt. Again, I don't use height, I just do roughness and put it till like almost white. The color I pick is something dark brown-ish, like so. Put on a black mask, and then you can put like either sand cavities, dirt, or whatever, and it gives you a bit of depth. After this I also go a bit in with manual painting because I don't like the fact that this should be more dirty, and you just spread it around however you want. Usually inside the creases. So yeah, that's the general thing of it. Play around with the opacity and yeah, different brushes. For the bottom also, like you can go a bit bigger and then just dirty it up. Also on the inside. And near the stones and the bottom of the stones, but that's gonna come a bit later. I am doing this with a mouse today because yeah, it's, I don't know, to spin it around more. Usually I'm like located in an area and I paint this because with the Wacom pen you can't turn as efficiently. Yeah. Once you're happy with this, you can go on to I gave you a save the file. That's the safest bet right now, because the moss texture or material usually it is a bit heavy, so it can lead to a crash, because you have to like the cache usage could jump up a bit, and you can like Substance can crash then, because the textures are a bit heavy on this model. So yeah. Okay. Once you're happy with this, you put on a moss, wait for it to load a bit. Okay. With this, then you get everything covered again, and you need to mask it. Substance usually comes with good smart masks. You can also buy many or create them as much as you want. I'm just using the default ones today, and I think you have moss already in. You get something like this. In the beginning, also, you have to set it to triplanar. And again, with the height, moss usually covers it, so you go through normal so that the wood doesn't show over it and combines with it in the process. What I do then is, again, add another paint layer and then just paint it out where you don't want the moss to be shown. Usually it's not in the most areas affected by the sun, so the top should be more or less with no moss. Only in the creases. If you don't know where it goes, reference photos is the best way to go. And also the textures of different mosses, but that'll take a bit of time. I don't think we have that much today. So I have this, then you can go back to this and then just play around with the amount of moss you want. Usually this would be fine, I think. You can also scale it however you wish. I think the default one as it comes is good enough. So what I do after this is just a bit more here. I group it, name it, and then duplicate. But what you want here is this material also gives you like the option inside of it to change the color however you want. So you can go a bit darker. Okay. Yeah, it takes a while. Some textures take a bit because they are heavy on the processing and on the graphics card, so, and mostly RAM. So this could either make it or crash it. So save before you do these. Okay. Then once you're done with these, you can put it to like overlay, black it out. So you should get a little bit more with the texture. Some like, not just one color, but a variety of them. Won't be visible, but it adds a little bit of flavor, I guess. And again, reference photos is the best thing we can do here. So I usually duplicate it again, put it on normal, and change the color to a more yellow tone. It will take some time now. This is the heaviest texture of the whole thing, so the other ones won't usually take as long. Okay, so you get a little like play with the lighting, and that's about it. Like minimum amount. But usually it's the details that you're looking for anyway, so it should be good. What I do is white mask it and do a paint, and then just delete the ones I really don't want inside of this. Like, after all, after everything, you do a little bit of cleaning on the whole general thing. Unless you did it before, and that's even better. But right now I'm a bit on time, so I can't do it perfectly. Go with the heights, and then just bring it down a little bit. Once you're happy with it, then you just have the ground left and a little bit of polishing. So for the ground, I also included texture, which is this one. I found it on Google, I think, so everything is free here. You import it, base color, color selection, and you pick the color you want. Okay. Scale it however you want. On the ground, you can go either triplanar or not. It's up to you, because it won't be that visible. And I also did, in materials, I gave you the stone soil, which I got somewhere. And yeah, you drag and drop it in. Takes a bit. Put this one over it. Yeah, okay. Set this one to triplanar again, and scale it however you want, just so that doesn't look like it's repeating like this. So something believable, probably like this. I white mask this one, put in a paint layer, and then just opacity, and just try to delete it out where I think some stuff should be shown, like a rock or just general dirt. Also, like for the end, what you can do, because we baked everything, to get a little bit more detail out of it, make a new layer, go for only height, put a black mask and fill. And when you get the curvature from the baking, you can pop it into the grayscale map, and it will affect the height because it's in black and white. And if you do more, you get more, or invert it. I usually leave it at around this, so you get a little bit more depth. And that's about it. So what I did just now is everything we did, I put in a folder, and if you click it off, it goes. So what we're gonna do now is to save space and RAM. If your computer is weak, we can take this and delete it. So now we have everything clear. Before I did this, Yishai will go over it. With the export maps, which I have here. He will go into detail about this. So I put it also in the folder. You will get all of these maps. Just a second. I put it into the channels. So what you do is you select everything, you drag and drop it into the substance shelf, click everything on texture, and current session. You import everything and you get these maps. Once that is done, you make a fill layer and you just plug it in, and that's it. So plug in the base color, you get the color. Metallic, we don't have anything, but I'll still plug it. The roughness, you can plug it, it brings it back. Normals and the height. So now you have a lot more space to work, so it won't crash or lag or anything. So continuing from yesterday, now all we do is basically detail work that is left. What I would do now is either make a mask or find something that's good from an existing one. You can also do that. It saves a lot of time. So I plugged in the copper red paint, which has a good sun bleach mask editor. So you take this one out and you can delete the rest. So it gives you this. Only on the surface where the light hits, you can modify it however you need to. With these, either you want to blur it or whatever. I usually leave it as this, maybe a little bit of a blur. After this, just click off the metal if you don't need it. Choose a color that you want. Technically it's probably a bit of a yellow. Set it to whatever fits. Usually it's an overlay or a soft light. Anything that brings it more out. Subtract, not the best one, but yeah. I think color dodge is fine, just to bring out a little bit of detail. So this one should be the top one. So get a little bit more going on. After this, yeah, you can just try to make like what this would try to tell you the story of the object you're making. I would go for a pure white one, no height, no nothing. Make a black mask, add a paint layer, and maybe do some bird poop or whatever you think should fit on the model. Take a drop or anything you want and make it look like believable. This one's like this. Again, put it wherever you want that you see fit. You can delete some out, leave them, whatever. Again, references, very good for this. I usually tone it down, add another black mask, another paint layer, and then continue from here. Once everything is done, another one, set it to black, mostly black. Another paint layer, and then you can have like a little stain where the center is. Try and make it more believable. Once this is finished and you're happy with it, you can do more details if you want, like probably a bit of roughness. If you think like the wood is wet or the paint is still fresher at some points. So again, black mask and paint it out however you see fit. This will be visible in the end once you put it into a render or maybe application if you have the need for it. Then after everything is done, you can do a final layer, put on a pass-through on whatever you need, usually normals, height, and roughness, and color. If you see some spots like this where the ID didn't do very well, you can now mask it and make it look more presentable. This will affect everything that's underneath, so usually I save it for last to just polish it up where it needs to be. This and maybe one final layer of just dirt. So take the base color, you put it onto a darker brown hue, put the roughness, and then either you could do a smart mask or paint it out manually. For now I'm gonna paint it manually. Substance now comes with the same brushes as Photoshop from Kyle, so they're actually really good. You can do a lot with these. So then what I do is just add it a bit more. Where do you think it should come? If you're doing it with a mouse, click Control and scroll the mouse wheel, so you don't have to size it up here, so it saves time. Usually multipliers will work fine, but in the end process it's good to go in manually and just make it how you need it to be, I mean, how it needs to look. I went for the damaged look of it, because I think it's fine if you do it for the first time, like not a fresh new model but an old one. So you can get more out of it. I mean, learn more about the program. Try to spin the light to see if you missed something or anything. Usually the bottom is where nobody sees, but in some maybe weird angle, if they do look at it, it's fine, but also the details are there. And if for some reason you get like a sharp edged line here, you can still come back to this, click W, take down the opacity and smoothen it out. Or if you find something like you like maybe this, you can also bring it here. And that is basically it. All that remains is, this is the texture from the original scan. And if you see you have like a writing here, what you can do now is make another one and just put height and color. Drop it down to a dark red. Add another black mask. This is where you will have to manually paint it. So for this I usually take something like this tone it down, and then you manually paint it in. And again, if you have the height, then you can like put it in so that you can see more. Try to get as much from this close to it as you can, if the client or whatever project needs it. So this is this, and then the last one. This is if you're using a tablet, it will come in handy because it can sense the pressure. So the strokes will be either thick if you want it, or go slim. So maybe if you want to pursue substance work or 3D or whatever, getting an Intuos tablet would be a good investment. But again, you can also do this with a mouse if you're low on budget. So yeah, now that this is done, get it like this, and you can still tweak either the color or the height, however you wish. I'm gonna go for like this, and maybe less brown. Yeah, this is it finished. When you're done, you can click the camera button or F10, and it puts you into a render, and you can choose like whatever you want as the background. If you save it as a PNG, the background will be black though. So yeah, that's it.